It was almost midnight in New York. The roads were quiet. But tonight, something unexpected was about to happen. The city never truly sleeps, but there are moments when it feels like it does. The traffic disappears. The noise fades. And the streets start to look different. Almost like another world. I was driving slowly through the empty streets. The yellow lights reflecting on the wet asphalt. A light rain had started to fall. The windshield wipers moved back and forth, creating a rhythm that almost sounded like a heartbeat. Left, right. At that hour, the city feels personal. Like it belongs only to the people still awake. Most windows were dark. But every once in a while you could see a small light in an apartment high above the street. Maybe someone studying. Maybe someone working late. Or maybe someone who simply couldn't sleep. I crossed the bridge and looked at the skyline. Even after seeing it hundreds of times, the view still felt unreal. The building stood tall in the darkness, their lights glowing softly through the misty rain. Something about driving at night makes you think differently. You start remembering things you normally forget during the busy daytime hours. Old conversations, old dreams, old decisions. I slowed down at a red light. There were no cars around, no pedestrians. Just the quiet hum of the engine and the soft rain tapping against the roof of the car. For a moment, it felt like the entire city had paused. Then the light turned green. I continued driving down a long avenue, the road stretching endlessly in front of me. The rain grew a little heavier now, turning the streets into mirrors, reflecting the neon lights of the city. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed over an elevated track. Its sound echoed through the quiet streets. Moments like this remind you how big the world really is, and how small we sometimes feel inside it. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Sometimes being small in a big city means there are endless possibilities waiting somewhere out there. As I kept driving, I noticed a small diner still open on the corner. A single neon sign flickered in the window. Inside there were only two people. A tired-looking waiter wiping the counter, and a man sitting alone with a cup of coffee. I wondered what his story was. Was he finishing a long shift at work? Was he waiting for someone? Or was he just another person who couldn't sleep tonight? New York is full of stories like that. Millions of people, millions of lives, millions of quiet moments happening at the same time. And yet, when you're driving alone at midnight, it feels like you're the only one in the world. The road ahead was empty again. The rain slowed down, turning into a soft drizzle. Streetlights passed one by one above the car, creating moving shadows across the dashboard. I turned onto another road and began heading toward the river. The road ahead stayed quiet. The rain had almost stopped now, leaving only tiny drops sliding slowly down the windshield. At night, directions don't matter as much. You just follow the road and see where it takes you. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, stretching out like long golden lines that disappeared under the car. Every now and then, a taxi would pass in the opposite direction. Its headlights would flash for a second, then disappear into the darkness behind me. I turned down a smaller street. The tall buildings gave way to older brick apartments. Fire escapes hung from the walls like dark metal ladders, and a single street lamp flickered quietly above the sidewalk. That's when I noticed something unusual. Up ahead, on the corner, someone was standing under the light. Not moving, just standing there in the rain. As I got closer, I slowed the car a little. It looked like an old man wearing a long coat and a hat. He wasn't holding an umbrella. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was simply watching the street, as if he had been waiting for something or someone. For a second, I wondered if he needed help. Maybe he was waiting for a ride. Maybe he was lost. But as the car rolled past him, he slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. There was something strange about the way he looked. Not scary, just calm, like he already knew something I didn't. Our eyes met for only a moment. Then the car passed the corner, and the streetlight faded behind me. In the mirror, I could still see him standing there, perfectly still. And then the fog swallowed the street again. I kept driving, but something about that moment stayed in my mind. It's funny how the smallest things can stick with you. A stranger on a quiet street. A single glance. A feeling you can't really explain. A few blocks later, I stopped at another red light. Again, no traffic, no sound except the engine and the soft ticking of rain cooling on the hood. I looked in the rear-view mirror again. The street behind me was empty now. The man was gone. Maybe he had walked away. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. The light turned green. I continued driving deeper into the city. The road slowly became wider again. A subway entrance appeared on the corner, steam rising into the cold night air. Somewhere underground, trains were still moving. Even at this hour, the city kept breathing. Block after block passed quietly. Then something else caught my attention. Far ahead, at the end of the avenue, a single traffic light kept changing colors. Red, yellow, green, over and over again, but there were no cars anywhere near it. It felt strange, watching it work for no one. Like the city was continuing its routine, even while the world slept. I drove through the green light and continued forward. And that's when something unexpected finally happened. I kept driving without really thinking about where I was going. A small black cat suddenly ran across the street in front of the car. I hit the brakes gently. The cat paused in the middle of the road for a second and looked at me. Its eyes reflected the headlights like two tiny green lights. Then it quietly continued across the street and disappeared between two parked cars. I exhaled and smiled a little. Maybe that was the unexpected moment the night had promised. Not a big event. Not something dramatic. Just a quiet reminder that even in a city of millions, the night still belongs to small, simple moments. I drove on. The road stretched forward again, calm and empty. The skyline slowly faded behind the fog. And the rain returned as a soft whisper against the roof. And somewhere between the rhythm of the wipers and the glow of distant lights, the road kept stretching forward into the night. The rain slowly grew steadier again, tapping softly against the windshield. At some point, you stop noticing the sound. It just becomes part of the drive, like breathing. The city blocks passed one by one. Closed shops, dark apartment windows. Occasionally, a small deli still glowing with fluorescent light. In one window, I saw a man inside mopping the floor, moving slowly across the tiles while listening to music only he could hear. For him, the night shift was almost over. For me, the night drive was just beginning. I turned onto a wider avenue. In the distance, the tall buildings of the city center rose into the fog again, their tops disappearing into the low clouds. It almost looked like the skyline was floating. Moments like this make New York feel unreal, like a movie scene that never ends. A few blocks later, I passed under an elevated train track. The metal beams above the road were dark and dripping with rain. For a moment, everything went quiet under the structure. Then suddenly, a train rushed overhead. The sound thundered through the steel beams and echoed down the empty street. For a few seconds, the entire world vibrated. Then it was gone again. Just silence. Just rain. Just the road. I kept driving. At a corner ahead, I noticed a small convenience store that was still open. The bright white lights inside made it stand out like a lighthouse in the darkness. Outside the door, a delivery bike leaned against the wall. Its seat was wet from the rain. A paper bag hung from the handlebars. Maybe someone had just picked up a late-night order. Or maybe the rider had gone inside for a quick coffee before another delivery. Every corner of the city has its own quiet story at this hour. Most people never see them. But if you stay awake long enough and keep driving long enough, the city slowly reveals them. The road curved slightly and led me toward another bridge. From the distance, I could see the long line of streetlights stretching across the water like a glowing path. The river below was dark and calm. Small ripples moved across its surface as the rain touched the water. I slowed the car slightly as I drove onto the bridge. Up here, the wind was stronger. It pushed softly against the side of the car. On the other side of the river, the lights of another neighborhood shimmered in the distance. Thousands of apartments, thousands of lives. Some people asleep, some people working. Some people staring at the ceiling, unable to rest. And maybe somewhere out there, someone else was also driving through the night like me. Just thinking, just breathing, just letting the road guide them forward. Halfway across the bridge, I rolled the window down slightly. Cool air rushed into the car. It smelled like rain and river water, and the faint metallic scent of the city. I took a deep breath. For a moment, everything felt perfectly still. Then I noticed something strange again. Far below the bridge, a small boat was moving slowly along the river. Its single white light glowed through the fog. At this hour, there shouldn't have been many boats out there, but there it was, gliding quietly across the dark water, heading somewhere unknown, just like the car, just like the night. I watched it for a moment as I drove. Then the bridge ended. The city welcomed me back with another long stretch of quiet streets. The rain softened again, and somewhere in the distance, a faint siren echoed through the sleeping city. Life was still moving, even at midnight. Even in the quiet. Even in the moments when it feels like the whole world has paused. I drove forward again, deeper into the night. Not searching for anything, not rushing anywhere. Just letting the road continue its silent story. The avenue stretched quietly ahead. The rain had turned into a soft mist now, barely visible in the glow of the streetlights. The pavement still shimmered from earlier showers, reflecting the lights like a long ribbon of gold. I drove slowly, letting the city guide the night. At this hour, time feels different. Minutes stretch longer. The world seems calmer, almost like it's breathing more slowly. A few blocks later, I noticed a park on the right side of the road. During the day, it would be full of people, kids playing, dogs running, music drifting through the air. But now it was empty. The benches were wet. The walking paths were quiet. The trees moved gently with the wind, their leaves whispering softly in the dark. I slowed the car and glanced through the fence as I passed. Under a single park lamp, I noticed someone sitting on a bench. A woman wrapped in a long coat. She wasn't using her phone. She wasn't moving. She was simply sitting there, looking out into the empty park. It made me wonder again. What brings people outside at this hour? Are they searching for something? Or escaping something? New York has millions of stories. And at night they feel even deeper. The road continued past the park and back into rows of buildings. A bakery on the corner had its lights on inside. Through the window I could see two workers preparing trays of bread for the morning. The warm yellow light from inside spilled onto the wet sidewalk. Soon the city would wake up again. Coffee shops would open. Subway platforms would fill with commuters. Taxi horns would replace the quiet of the night. But right now, there was still time before that happened. The last peaceful hours before sunrise. I stopped at another red light. Still no cars, still no sound except the faint hum of the engine. That's when I noticed something above the buildings. The clouds were beginning to break apart. Between them, a few stars were starting to appear. It's rare to see stars clearly in the city. But after the rain, sometimes the sky opens for a moment. I leaned back slightly in the seat and watched them while waiting for the light to change. Green, I drove forward again. A few minutes later, I reached another long road running beside the water. This time I didn't stop. I just kept moving slowly along the shoreline. The river was calmer now. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing the distant outline of buildings across the water. The skyline looked peaceful, almost quiet enough to forget how busy it becomes during the day. Then something unexpected happened again. Ahead on the sidewalk, I saw a small group of people laughing. 3 friends walking together, holding umbrellas and talking loudly. Their voices echoed slightly through the empty street. For a moment, the silence of the night broke. They passed by the car without even noticing it. Just 3 people enjoying a late walk through the rainy city. Moments like that remind you that the night isn't lonely for everyone. For some people, it's when life actually begins. They disappeared down the street, their laughter fading slowly behind me. The road became empty again. The rain finally stopped. Only the wet pavement remained as proof that it had ever fallen. Far in the distance, the sky had begun to change. Just slightly. Not sunrise yet, but the darkness was beginning to soften. Night was slowly giving way to morning. I realized I had been driving for a long time now. But I didn't feel tired. Sometimes a quiet drive clears your mind in ways nothing else can. No noise, no rush. Just movement. Just the rhythm of the road. And as the first faint hint of dawn touched the edges of the sky above New York, I understood something. It was the calm. The chance to see the city in a way most people never do. And as the car continued down the quiet avenue, the story of the night slowly moved toward morning. Outside, the morning sun began touching the tops of the buildings. A new day was starting. I stepped out of the car and closed the door. The night drive was over. But somewhere out there in another quiet street, another driver was probably beginning the same journey. And the city, as always, continued its endless story. Subscribe and like, open notification for new story.